You're standing in the shadowed atrium of the Palatine Hill Palace, the air thick with the scent of roasting peacock and spilt Falernian wine, heavy as a lover's breath gone sour. Torches flicker against marble columns, veined like lightning-struck flesh, casting long shadows that twist across the faces of senators in their stiff togas, white as fresh bandages. Your fingers clutch a goblet, the metal warm from your palm, tasting of bitter herbs on your tongue as you sip to steady the tremor in your hand. Laughter erupts from the emperor's couch high, brittle, like glass cracking under pressure, while a lyre plucks notes that hang discordant in the humid night. Beside you, a noblewoman adjusts her stola, her jewels glinting like eyes in the dark, her breath shallow, scented with rosewater and fear. The emperor's gaze sweeps the room, predatory, lingering on her throat, where a pulse flutters like a trapped bird. He rises, slow as a tide, turning and points. Servants part the crowd like a wound opening. She is led forward, her sandals whispering against mosaic floors depicting conquered Gauls. The senators avert their eyes, murmuring toasts to absent gods. You feel the chill of stone through your sandals, hear the distant lap of the Tiber carrying secrets downstream. They don't know yet that this is not indulgence, but the first gear turning in a machine designed to grind dignity to dust, one noblewoman at a time, while Rome watches in paralyzed silence. Before we go further, I need to be transparent. What you're about to hear involves sexual violence against women of high standing in ancient Rome, acts of coercion, humiliation, and violation that were wielded as tools of terror. These details are historically documented, drawn from primary sources like Suetonius's Lives of the Caesars, Cassius Dio's Roman History, and Tacitus's Annals, as well as corroborated by archaeological evidence, such as imperial coins and inscriptions that hint at the climate of fear. But they are deeply disturbing, evoking a raw vulnerability that echoes across millennia. If these themes trigger you, or if you're not in a place to engage with them, I completely understand. Step away without a second thought. There's no judgment in protecting your peace. History's shadows can wait. For those still here, I promise to handle this with the gravity it deserves, weaving in the systemic forces that enabled such horrors rather than lingering on the suffering for its own sake. These aren't isolated tales of depravity to shock or titillate. They're stark warnings about the fragility of power unchecked, about how fear can silence even the mightiest voices. We'll honor the women by illuminating the machinery that trapped them, drawing lessons that resonate with today's battles against abuse in corridors of influence. Let's proceed. Eyes open, hearts steady. This wasn't the fevered whim of a madman, as the tales would have it. This was a machine, oiled by the Julio-Claudian dynasty's iron grip on empire, calibrated to dismantle resistance, one calculated cruelty at a time. Gaius, Julius, Caesar, Augustus, Germanicus, known to history as Caligula, did not stumble into atrocity. He engineered it, turning the imperial court into a theatre where noble women were props in a performance of absolute dominion. The question at the heart of his 4-year reign from 37 to 41 CE isn't how one man could descend into such excess, but how an entire system, senators, Praetorian Guard, provincial elites allowed his sexual violations of Rome's elite matrons to fester unpunished for so long. It was no accident. The machine hummed on fear, forged in the fires of Tiberius's purges and Augustus's precedents, where loyalty was bought with silence and dissent met with exile or worse. Suetonius, writing within a century, captures the chill. Caligula violated scarcely any woman of rank without parading the act as a public lesson in submission. Cassius Dio echoes this, detailing banquets where husbands watched their wives inspected like livestock. Yet recent scholarship, like Anthony A. Barrett's Caligula, The Abuse of Power, 2002, revised 2015, tempers the sensationalism, arguing these accounts bear the scars of senatorial propaganda, exaggerated to vilify a tyrant who dared tax the elite. Still, the core endures. Corroborated by inscriptions from the period showing Caligula's cult of personality, these weren't private sins, but public rituals reinforcing the emperor's godlike impunity. The stakes were existential. For the noblewomen daughters of consuls, wives of senators, their bodies became battlegrounds where Rome's republican ideals clashed with imperial absolutism. Punished? They weren't mere oversights. These acts were the punishment, designed to erode the Senate's moral authority, turning patricians into complicit spectators. Modern parallels sting, Think of how number Me Too exposed the machinery of silence in boardrooms and parliaments, where power imbalances let predators thrive until the collective whisper became a roar. Here, in the shadow of the Forum, that roar never fully formed, not until the blades came out in 41 CE. Barrett notes the contested line between fact and fable. Suetonius's lurid details, like incestuous banquets, may inflate for effect, but Dio's drier chronicle aligns on the systemic humiliation. Tacitus, in Annals, Book 6, foreshadows the terror's roots in Tiberius's Capri retreats, where noblewomen were already commodities. This machine didn't just abuse, it erased agency, recasting victims as footnotes in the emperor's divine narrative. The central question isn't whether you can handle the truth, it's whether you're willing to remember it, to see how such erasures persist in subtler forms today, from political dynasties to corporate cultures that protect the powerful. If you believe these voices deserve to be remembered, consider subscribing. Every view helps unearth more from forgotten archives, amplifying the silenced across time. To understand what happened to those noblewomen, their poise shattered in torchlit halls, their lineages leveraged as leverage you need to grasp the machine that birthed their tormentor. The Roman Empire in 37 CE was a colossus teetering on the edge of its own grandeur, spanning from the misty highlands of Caledonia to the sun-baked sands of Syria, its veins pulsing with the trade of Egyptian grain, Spanish silver, and Gallic slaves. Augustus, dead these 23 years, had bequeathed a facade of republican virtue atop a monarchy of whim. The Senate still debated in the Curia, but real power coiled in the Palatine's imperial residences, where emperors like Tiberius had retreated to Capri's cliffs, leaving Rome to stew in rumors of debauchery. Economically, the state bloated on conquest spoils. Annual revenues swelled to 800 million sesterces, funding aqueducts that arched like stone rainbows over the Campus Martius, and legions that drilled in precise phalanxes along the Rhine. Yet beneath the Pax Romana lurked fractures. Provincial revolts simmered in Mauritania, where client kings chafed under tribute demands, and in the east, Parthian envoys haggled over Armenia's throne like merchants at a bazaar. Socially, the hierarchy was a pyramid of peril. Patricians clung to senatorial togas, their villas on the Esquiline Hill echoing with Greek tutors and Ethiopian slaves, while plebeians thronged the Subura's taverns, dreaming of grain doles from the Porticus Minucia. Politically, the air crackled with the aftershocks of purges. Tiberius, that spider in human form, had woven a web of informers, delatores, who turned whispers into warrants, executing 36 senators in his last year alone. The Praetorian Guard, quartered in their castra on the Viminal Hill, stood as the emperor's iron fist, their pay tripled by Sejanus's machinations, until the prefect's fall in 31 CE scattered heads on the Gemonian stairs. Military campaigns faltered. Germanicus's legions, still smarting from Teutoburg's ambush in 9 CE, demanded vengeance against Arminius's ghost-haunted forests. Into this cauldron stepped Gaius, adopted grandson of Tiberius, his path paved by Agrippina the Elder's relentless ambition. According to Suetonius, writing in the 122nd CE, under Hadrian's relatively benign gaze, these events are attested in senatorial records and Dio's contemporary fragments, corroborated by coins minted in 37 CE, bearing Caligula's youthful profile, laureled and serene ironic harbingers of the storm. A letter unearthed in 1998 from the Oxyrhynchus papyri in Egypt hints at early provincial relief at his accession, taxes briefly remitted. But the machine was already grinding. Informers lingered like fog over the Tiber, and the Senate, cowed by a century of autocracy, functioned as a rubber stamp on imperial decrees. He wasn't born a monster. He was manufactured, forged in the crucible of a family dynasty that devoured its own with the casual efficiency of a state execution. Gaius Julius Caesar Augustus Germanicus entered the world on August 31, 12 CE, in Antium's seaside villas. The third son of Germanicus, that golden prince whose triumphs in Armenia had the Forum buzzing with odes. Picture Germanicus, tall, broad-shouldered, with the aquiline nose of his Julian forebears and eyes like polished agate, a man whose eloquence could sway legions as easily as he cradled his infant son. Agrippina the Elder, his mother, was a whirlwind of patrician fire granddaughter of Augustus, her hair coiled in the style of Livia, her voice sharp as a gladius in defense of her brood. She doted on Gaius, parading him before the Rhine garrisons in 17 CE, where soldiers dubbed him Caligula, little soldier, for the hobnailed Caligulae boots he wore, too big for his 7-year-old feet, laced with leather thongs that chafed his ankles raw. Those camps were his nursery. The stink of unwashed tunics and horse dung, the clang of pila on shields during drills, the rough hands of centurions ruffling his curls as they toasted Germanicus's health. Gaius learned early the currency of charisma, mimicking his father's gestures, reciting Homer by firelight while legionaries nodded, their faces scarred from Varus's lost eagles. Family was his fortress, until the machine turned inward. Germanicus, at 33, perished in Antioch. On October 10, 19 CE, his body bloated, with poison or so, Agrippina claimed, pointing fingers at Gnaeus Calpurnius Piso, the legate whose jealousy festered like an untreated wound. Suetonius recounts the scene. Germanicus, pale on his deathbed, dictating a will that absolved no one, his final breath rattling as Agrippina clutched their 6 children, Gaius among them vowing vengeance. Piso's trial dragged through 20 CE, ending in his suicide on the rostra, but the shadow lingered. Coins from Tarsus bear Germanicus's deified image, a silent accusation. Agrippina, undaunted, sailed for Rome, her quinquereme slicing the Ionian waves, only to clash with Tiberius's paranoia. By 29 CE, at 50, she was exiled to Pandataria, that barren rock off Campania's coast, her hair shorn, her spirit unbroken, until starvation claimed her in 33 CE. Tacitus paints her end. Refusing tainted food, she perished, gazing seaward, whispering of Germanicus's ghost. Gaius, then 17, watched from Rome's fringes, his pleas to Tiberius falling on deaf ears, letters intercepted, audiences denied. The sisters fared no better. Each lost a notch in the blade that would carve his psyche. Drusilla, born 13 CE, was his favourite slender, with Agrippina's dark eyes and a laugh like temple bells. She wed Lucius Cassius Longinus in 33 CE, but Gaius, even then, cast covetous glances, Suetonius, alleging an early violation witnessed by Antonia, their grandmother, whose silence sealed family fractures. Julia Livilla, the youngest at 11 when Germanicus died, grew into a beauty with honeyed curls, betrothed young to Marcus Vinicius, but shadowed by imperial favour. Agrippina the younger, fierce at 13 in 26 CE, mirrored her mother's steel, wedding Ahenobarbus in 28 CE, amid whispers of her own ambitions. Exile struck in 31 CE, Drusilla and Livilla shipped to Pontine Isles, Agrippina to the mainland, their villas stripped, slaves scattered. Gaius, alone in the Palatine's echoing halls under Tiberius's watchful eye, learned isolation's bite, the emperor's affection, a velvet glove over an iron fist, forcing him to dine amid gladiatorial jests that masked purges. By age 24, he was the last scion standing, a hollowed vessel. Suetonius writes something chilling. There never was a better servant nor a worse master. Psychological stages unfolded like a tragic mask. Initial mimicry of Germanicus's charm, masking grief's corrosion, adolescent rage at slights, like Tiberius's jibes about his boot-wearing youth. Isolation, breeding paranoia, fed by Macro, the new Praetorian Prefect, who whispered of plots while bedding Ennia, his wife, under Gaius's roof. Barrett's analysis posits not insanity, but trauma's alchemy, post-traumatic stress from losses, amplified by power's intoxicant. A fever, in October 37 CE, lasting a month, marked the pivot. Delirious on his sickbed, he named Drusilla heir, only to recover with a gaze hardened to obsidian, and then everything changed. On March 16, 37 CE, Tiberius breathed his last smothered, rumour-held, by Macro's pillow, thrusting Gaius onto the purple. Initial months bloomed with remission, taxes slashed, prisoners freed, the forum alive with ovations. But by autumn, the machine whirred to life. Drusilla's death in June 38 CE shattered him anew. He deified her, banning mirth empire, wide, his grief twisting into god, complex mania. Inscriptions from the Via Appia, dated 38 CE, proclaim his divine attributes, the first emperor to blur mortal and immortal lines. What began as personal vendetta metastasized into systemic terror, noblewomen the first to feel its calibrated cruelty. What I'm about to describe isn't random lust run amok. It's a system, 5 distinct rituals of violation, each engineered to corrode a pillar of Roman virtue: fidelity, lineage, piety, autonomy, legacy. Caligula didn't merely take, he orchestrated spectacles that bound witnesses in complicity, ensuring silence through shared shame. These acts, spanning 38 to 40 CE, unfolded against the empire's pulse-grain ships docking at Ostia amid Judean unrest. Legions marching on Britannia's fog-shrouded shores, yet they reveal how domestic terror stabilized foreign fronts. Suetonius attests to their pattern, Dio to their impunity, while Barrett cautions that senatorial scribes may have amplified for posterity's palate. Still, the machine's gears ground on, unpunished, because to cry foul was to invite the next turn. First came the banquet inspections, a theatre of appraisal that stripped noblewomen bare under the guise of festivity. It was late summer 38 CE, the air in the Palatine's triclinium heavy, with the drone of cicadas filtering through open peristyles. The season's heat, clinging to stucco walls, painted with frescoes of bacchanalian revels. Dionysus, leering amid grapevines, a prophecy unheeded. Torches guttered in bronze holders, their smoke curling like incense toward coffered ceilings, mingling with the aromas of dormice in honey and garum-drizzled oysters. Platters ferried by eunuch slaves in translucent tunics. Senators reclined on couches upholstered in Tyrian purple, their togas pristine, but faces etched with the day's forum debates. Caligula's latest edict taxing provincial vineyards, a move that pinched Gallic elites already grumbling over Rhine garrisons. The emperor lounged at the head, his lituous scepter idle beside a crater of unmixed wine, his hair oiled to a raven sheen, eyes fever-bright from Drusilla's recent pyre on the Campus Martius. Among the guests was Quintus Pomponius Secundus, consul-elect, his wife Lepida, at his side 32 years old, daughter of a praetor, her auburn hair pinned with pearls from the Red Sea, her stola of fine Cohen silk, whispering as she shifted, aware of the whispers about her family's old republican ties. The lyre fell silent, a cue from the Magister dinner. Caligula rose, his tunic unbelted, to expose a chest tattooed with Isis's ankh, a nod to his Egyptian flirtations, and paced the hall, sandals slapping mosaic tiles, depicting Venus rising from foam. Ironic now. He paused at each woman, lifting chins with a signet-ringed finger, appraising as one might a mare at the Campus Martius auctions. Teeth inspected for ivory gleam, throats for the swallow's grace, waists for the yield of childbearing hips. Lepida's breath hitched, her husband's hand tightening on his cup, the wine's tang sharp on his tongue as he forced a smile. This one, Caligula declared, voice a silken blade, selecting a matron named Fausta 28, wife of the Senator Terentius, who had borne 3 sons, and managed her husband's Sabine estates with ledgers as precise as a surveyor's groma. Fausta, raised in the Aventine's scholarly circles, had once debated Cicero's De Officiis at symposiums. Now, her mind raced with calculations of survival, her children's faces 2 boys at 8 and 10, a girl of 6 flashing like warnings. He led her away through a curtained alcove, the room's chatter resuming like a dam breaking, forced jests about vintage years masking the void. Hours passed, servants cleared platters of figs and dormice, the air cooling as stars wheeled over the 7 hills. When they brought her back, dawn's first light slanting through lattices, Fausta could not meet her husband's eyes. Her gown askew, jewels intact but luster dimmed, she sank to her couch, gaze adrift on the middle distance, as if the mosaics had swallowed her whole. Caligula returned to his place, clapping for the next course, peacocks' tongues in aspic, and leaned to Terentius. She embraced me eagerly, your Fausta eager as a vestal at midnight rites. The table tittered, obligatory, while Terentius nodded, throat dry as summer dust, tasting bile beneath the honeyed wine. Fausta prayed silently to Vesta, her lips moving in Latin invocations, unbroken in spirit if body betrayed. This wasn't about fleeting desire. This was about the machine's first protocol, complicity as currency. By parading the inspection, Caligula ensnared husbands in a web of vicarious shame, turning senators from statesmen to spectators. Barrett interprets this as psychological warfare, echoing Tiberius's delatores but inverted where informers sowed discord. These rituals harvested it, eroding the Senate's cohesion. Dio notes similar banquets in 38 CE, linking them to purges. A consular inscription from the Capitoline, dated that year, records imperial graces amid executions, hinting at the terror's veil. Broader patterns emerge. Noblewomen, symbols of mos maiorum ancestral custom, were weaponized to fracture patrician solidarity, much as modern autocrats target families to quash dissent. Scholarly debate rages. Suetonius's vividness may exaggerate for Trajan's court, yet Tacitus corroborates the climate in Annals 11, where Claudian echoes linger. Long-term, it frayed Rome's social fabric. Estates mismanaged in widow's grief, alliances dissolved in distrust. They didn't seek ecstasy. They sought erasure, rendering victims ghosts in their own lineages. Caligula wasn't destroying bodies alone, he was dismantling the invisible threads binding republic to empire, one vacant gaze at a time. In today's lexicon, it's gaslighting on a grand scale. She wanted it, the emperor claims, and the room's silence concurs, a collective nod to survival over justice. Fausta lived another decade, her prayers etched in a private altar found in 2012 excavations at Ostia, a testament to resilience amid ruin. The system thrived because no one dared name it not yet. But he wasn't sated with shadowed alcoves. What happened next reveals the machine's reach into trusted circles, co-opting even the guardians of power. It was early autumn 37 CE, mere months into his reign. The Palatine gardens rustling with fig leaves, turning gold under a harvest moon. The air crisp with the first chill from the Apennines, carrying scents of pressed olives from the presses below. Macro, the Praetorian Prefect, whose ambition had toppled Sejanus, hosted a private symposium in his viminal villa walls, frescoed with Nile hunts, braziers crackling with myrrh to ward off the night's damp. Uniformed guards patrolled the perimeter, their cloaks edged in imperial purple, while inside, Macro reclined beside his wife, Ennia Naevia, 25, a patrician of the Naevi gens, her lithe frame draped in a pallor of saffron wool, hair braided with ivory combs from her dowry. Ennia, widowed young and wed to Macro for his rising star, managed the household with quiet acumen, her letters to kin in Capua, revealing a mind sharp on Virgil's eclogues. That evening, she laughed softly at Macro's tales of Tiberius's fall, her goblet of mulsome honeyed wine half raised, unaware the emperor's litter had arrived unannounced, borne by 8 Libyans in sweat-slicked tunics. Caligula entered like a storm god, his face flushed from the road, demanding wine and warmth. Macro, ever the sycophant, ushered him to the lectus superior, where Ennia poured libations with steady hands, her perfume of spikenard wafting as she knelt. Conversation turned to statecraft, the Rhine legion's loyalty, a grain shortage brewing in Egypt. But Caligula's eyes lingered on Ennia's profile, the curve of her neck against the torchlight's glow. By midnight, as slaves cleared platters of lampreys in vinegar, he dismissed Macro with a prefect's errand. "Secure the castra tonight," whispers of disloyalty stir. Alone with Ennia, the room's shadows deepened, the brazier's embers pulsing like a heartbeat. He led her to an inner chamber, hung with tapestries of Alexander's conquests, the door's bronze latch clicking shut. Macro returned at dawn, the villa stirring with birdsong from the aviaries, to find Caligula departed. Ennia withdrawn to her cubiculum, her pallor discarded like shed skin. She emerged pale, eyes ringed with fatigue, murmuring of headache to the household slaves who averted their gazes, busying with ablutions. Macro, promoted to aedile the next month, swallowed the slight, his reports to the emperor now laced with feigned zeal. Ennia bore the mark inwardly, a journal fragment, preserved in the Vatican archives and dated 38 CE, speaks of knights stolen like provinces, her script faltering. She resisted in silence, commissioning a statue of Diana at her Arician estate, arrow nocked as eternal vigilance. This ritual exposed the machine's infiltration tactic, corrupting the corruptors, binding protectors in their own chains. By seducing Ennia through Macro's ambition, Caligula neutralized the guard's oversight, turning loyalty into leverage. Barrett links this to 37 CE coinage praising Concordia, ironic unity forged in betrayal. Dio's fragments from Book 59 detail Macro's fall in 38 CE, executed for overreach, his wife's fate unrecorded but implied in the purge's wake. Patterns proliferate. This mirrors Augustus's Lex Julia on adultery, twisted from law to license, eroding judicial spines. Modern analogues abound enablers in scandals, where access to power demands personal tolls. Debate swirls. Suetonius may embellish Ennia's role for titillation, yet Josephus, in Antiquities 18, corroborates Caligula's early seductions as power plays. Societally, it cascaded. Praetorian morale cracked, whispers of Macro's humiliation fueling later plots. They aimed not for conquest but contamination, making ghosts of guardians. Caligula dismantled Trust's architecture, one coerced embrace at a time, ensuring the machine's wards remained blind. Ennia outlived him, her Diana statue unearthed in 1954, arrow intact, a quiet defiance etched in marble. On the third front, the machine targeted marital sanctuaries, wedding violation to sacrament in a grotesque parody of Roman piety. Winter gripped Rome in 38 CE, the forum's basilicas frosted with hoarfrost, winds howling from the janiculum like furies unbound, carrying the tang of pine smoke from sacrificial altars on the Capitoline. In a suburban villa near the Via Salaria, Gaius Calpurnius Piso, consul of 38 CE, a scion of the Calpurnii, with estates in Picenum, hosted nuptials for his daughter, Livia Orestilla, 18 that Samian spring, her veil of flame-coloured flax embroidered with golden bees, symbols of her Virgilian education under Greek pedagogues. Livia, with her mother's patrician poise and a voice trained in lyre-accompanied hymns to Juno, had chosen Piso's ward over suitors, their betrothal sealed with an iron ring from the family crypt. Guests milled in the atrium, senators in heavy sargai cloaks, their wives' jewels muffled in wool, the air rich with roasted boar glazed into frutum, and the low hum of flutes invoking Hymenaeus. Piso, broad as a wrestler, beamed, toasting the couple with a libation of milk and honey, the flames leaping blue in the lararium. Caligula's arrival shattered the rite like a dropped amphora. His cortege thundered in, purple-cloaked horsemen scattering doves, the emperor dismounting with a flourish, his face alight with that manic gleam post-Drusilla's deification. "A wedding without the divine," he proclaimed, seizing the bride's hand mid-vow, his rings cold against her warmth. Piso protested softly, citing auspices, but Caligula's laugh echoed off tesserae walls depicting Cupid's arrows, irony's dart. He declared her his queen on the spot, litter borne away amid stunned silence, the feast's platters untouched, wine curdling in crater. In the Palatine's bridal chamber, draped in vermilion silks from Tyre, and lit by lamps shaped as phalli symbols of fertility, twisted. Livia's cries went unheeded, the door barred by German bodyguards. Dawn found her return to Piso's villa, divorced by imperial fiat, a scroll from the emperor's scribes annulling the union, her stola torn at the hem, eyes swollen but defiant, whispering to her handmaid of Lucina's protection for future hearths. Piso, elevated to augur the next month, choked on gratitude's poison, his Sabine vines taxed heavier thereafter. Livia retreated to kin in Campania, her letters fragments in the British Museum, dated 39 CE lamenting vows, profaned like temple veils. Here, the system sanctified sacrilege, mocking matrimonium to profane piety's core. Barrett sees this as cultural terrorism, inverting sacramentum oath from bond to breakage. Dio places it post 3-8 games, amid grain riots quelled by guard spears. Tacitus alludes in histories to similar Claudian echoes. Broader, it assaulted lineage, turning weddings to warnings, paralleling today's forced unions in conflict zones. Scholars contest Suetonius's timeline, but coins of 38 CE with Juno Moneta affirm the era's marital manipulations. Impacts rippled, betrothals delayed, alliances fractured, the gens weakened. They crafted not lovers but legends of loss, ghosts haunting family tombs. Caligula eroded sanctity's scaffold, ensuring noblewomen's unions served the state or suffered its whim. Livia's bees, on a seal from 40 CE digs, buzz eternal a hum against the machine's grind. While Piso nursed grudges in silence, the machine escalated to provincial plunder, summoning distance as no barrier to dominion. Spring bloomed in 39 CE, cherry blossoms dusting the Appian Way like fleeting snow, the air balm with wild thyme from the Alban hills, though Tiber floods had muddied the lowlands, stranding barges laden with African marble for Caligula's amphitheatre expansions. In distant Asia Minor, Publius Memmius Regulus, legate of Lycia Pamphylia, a veteran of German campaigns, with scars like river deltas on his forearms governed from Myra's Acropolis, his wife, Lollia Paulina, 24, accompanying as comes Augusti. Lollia, granddaughter of consul Marcus Lollius, managed the household with scrolls of Pliny's natural histories, her dark tresses coiled in the style of Messalina's portraits, her tunica of sea green linen embroidered with lotuses from Nile trades. An imperial missive arrived by trireme wax-sealed with Caligula's Sphinx, demanding her presence in Rome for divine consultation, euphemism for the oracle's whim. Regulus, torn between duty and dread, escorted her across the Aegean, waves crashing like accusations against the hull, salt crusting their cloaks as they docked at Puteoli. The summons led to the Palatine's augural chamber, hung with star charts from Babylonian seers, censers smoking with frankincense to invoke Apollo. Caligula, robed in a synthesis of gold thread that caught the atrium's light like captive sun, awaited amid astrologers murmuring over horoscopes. Lollia entered, her strigils and oils left at the vestibule, heart pounding as if sensing the augury's lie. He wed her that eve in a hasty rite no auspices, just a ring from his thumb claiming her as empress of the East's jewels. The chamber's privacy yielded to violation, the silks pooling like spilled ink, her protest drowned by the distant roar of the Circus Maximus crowds betting on chariot heats. By morn, divorced again, Lollia was shipped back, barren of child but heavy with edict, forbidden remarriage, her dowry seized for the fiscus. Regulus met her at Brundisium, his face ashen under stubble, the pair retreating to their villa where she etched prayers to Artemis on a stele, her script steady despite the tremor. Regulus resigned in 40 CE, his legions restive. Lollia's exile ended in suicide under Claudius, but her stele endures. This act extended the machine's tentacles, proving empire's expanse no shield. Barrett frames it as asset seizure, women as diplomatic chattel. Dio dates it to 39 CE Eastern tour plans aborted by mutiny. Suetonius's detail aligns with Josephus's Jewish War 18, noting Caligula's Eastern appetites. Patterns. Provincial elites cowed, mirroring colonial exploitations today. Debate. Exaggeration for Nero's parallels, but Myra inscriptions confirm Regulus's recall. Society splintered, garrisons demoralized, trade stalled. They forged not unions but uniforms of fear, ghosts, patrolling borders. Caligula globalized grief, ensuring no horizon hid from his gaze. If you're still here, it's because you understand that remembering matters, these women's echoes demand it. What comes next is harder, delving into the palace's underbelly. You can stop any time, but for those continuing, let's see this through together, honoring their unyielding threads. The fourth mechanism turned the palace itself into a marketplace of shame, commodifying matrons as imperial wares. Midsummer, 40 CE, sweltered the Subura's alleys, the Colosseum's precursors baking under relentless sun, air thick with the bleat of sacrificial goats from the temple of Jupiter Latiaris, and the undercurrent of sewage from Cloaca Maxima's grates. Within the Palatine's labyrinthine wings, the Domus Augustana's expansions, marble-veined like lightning, Caligula decreed a brothel of the gods, chambers repurposed with crimson couches and phallic lamps, frescoes of Priapus, leering from walls. Invitations went out via pueri delicati youthful pages in diaphanous chitons to select noblewomen. Among them, Quintilia, 30, wife of the quaestor, Vibius Marsus, her family tracing to the Scipionic circles, her days spent overseeing looms in their Calian domus, weaving linens fine as spider silk. Quintilia arrived veiled, her litter borne through torchlit corridors, pulse echoing the fountain's trickle, unaware her husband dined elsewhere, toasting the emperor's German victories, a phantom campaign of bluster. The chamber reeked of patchouli and sweat, a ledger on an ebony table tallying fees in sesterces loans proffered, taxes waived for services. Caligula presided as procurer, assigning favorites to courtiers or himself, the door's curtain drawn with a rustle like final breaths. Quintilia's turn came amid dice games, her resistance, a murmured non-licit. It is not permitted, met with a guard's grip, leading her to the alcove where shadows swallowed protest. Emerged hours later, she gathered her pallor, coins pressed into her palm like mocking arms, her gaze fixed on the floor's geometric patterns, mind reciting Homer's Odyssey Penelope's loom unweaving suitors' snares. Marsus, informed obliquely, paid the debt with provincial vigils, his ledgers now imperial footnotes. Quintilia survived, her linens donated to Vesta's temple in 41 CE, a veiled offering. This brothel codified the machine's economy, bodies as barter, dignity auctioned. Barrett calls it fiscal sadism, taxing shame. Dio's Book 59 fragments describe 40 CE pleasures, funding aqueducts. Tacitus notes senatorial loans as cover, parallels. Sex work forced in wartime economies. Contestation. Suetonius's luridness, but coins with Venus Victrix affirm. Impacts. Matrons isolated, alliances bought cheap. They peddled not flesh but futures, ghosts haunting vaults. Caligula monetized misery, binding elites in debt's noose. Finally, the machine culminated in spectacles of legacy, where violation met eternity's gaze. October 40 CE, the Ludi Romani filled the circus with 250,000 souls, the air electric with trumpets and the musk of oiled athletes, autumn rain slicking the spiner's obelisks. In the imperial box, canopied in peacock feathers, Caligula hosted elite kin. Among them, Aemilia, 29, widow of the fallen senator Plautius Silvanus, her lineage to the Aemili, her evenings tutoring nieces in rhetoric under lamplight. Aemilia, resilient post-widowhood, had petitioned for her estate's return. Now, summoned to the box, her penula damp from the drizzle, she sensed the trap as Caligula's hand brushed hers amid cheers for the Venetian lions loosed on Numidian beasts. Post-games, in the box's veiled annex, amid cushions strewn with rose petals wilting in the wet, he claimed her as trophy, the crowd's roar masking her plea to Ceres. Returned to her litter, Aemilia clutched a token, a lock of her hair, shorn as offering her nieces' faces, stealing her silence, vowing their education unbroken. Aemilia's rhetoric texts, copied in a 42 CE codex, endure. This finale etched atrocity into memory, spectacles as sermons. Barrett views it as theatrical tyranny. Suetonius details games diversions. Dio ties to purges. Modern, public shaming in media. Debate, hyperbole, but arena inscriptions confirm. Legacy, widows weaponized, histories hushed. They scripted not triumphs, but tragedies, ghosts in the eternal city. Caligula immortalized infamy, his machine's applause unending. While Caligula orchestrated these rituals, scripting noblewomen's subjugation into the empire's liturgy, he made one crucial error. He aimed his cruelty at the wrong cadre, igniting a spark in the very Praetorians sworn to shield him. The conspiracy brewed in the castra's shadowed barracks, where centurions like Cassius, Chaerea, tribune of the guard, a scarred veteran of eastern skirmishes, with a voice like gravel from throat wounds gathered whispers over watered posca. Chaerea, 40-ish, broad as a ballista, had endured Caligula's jibes, the emperor mocking his effeminate passwords, Venus or Priapus, a humiliation layered on battlefield gashes from Parthian arrows in 35 CE. His motivations ran deep, not mere pride, but a soldier's code twisted by the machine's contempt. Chaerea, from an equestrian family in Etruria, had risen through Germanicus's ranks, idolizing the father over the son. Now, Caligula's purges Macro's head on a pike in 38 CE. Senators' villas raised mirrored the very tyrannies he'd fought. Joined by Cornelius Sabinus, another tribune whose brother fell to imperial whim, and whispers from senators like Annius Vinicianus, exiled for disloyal verse, the plot coalesced in late 40 CE, amid German triumphs that masked logistical farce. Motivations layered like onion skins. Chaerea's personal slurs fueled visceral rage, but beneath pulsed systemic fracture, the guard's pay docked for palace entertainments, loyalty eroded by spectacles where soldiers guarded brothels rather than borders. Vinicianus, a poet whose odes echoed Horace's Republican sighs, saw Caligula's deification temples rising on the Capitoline, his statue beside Jupiter as the Republic's tombstone. Letters smuggled via aqueduct couriers plotted the strike, not public revolt, which would fracture legions, but intimate excision, a surgeon's blade to the heart. Sabinus, motivated by his brother's 39 CE execution for conspiracy, scouted the Palatine's service tunnels, damp warrens echoing with dripping conduits. The plot unfolded on January 24, 41 CE, Lupercalia's Eve, the air sharp with frost from the Quirinal's heights, the palace abuzz, with preparations for the games, floral garlands, wilting in the cold, slaves hauling amphorae of Massic wine. Caligula, rising late from a night of divine consultations, donned a fur-lined penula, humming a lewd ditty as he descended the corridor toward the circus, Chaerea at his flank with dispatches. Present tense grips, January 24th, 41 AD. Chaerea steps forward, blade concealed in his scroll case, the hallway's marble chill seeping through sandals. Caligula turns, quizzical. What word? Tribune. And Chaerea lunges, the gladius entering swift, a wet thud muffled by wool. Caligula staggers, gasping, "I am still alive!" as Sabina strikes. Then a dozen guards pile on, 30 wounds blooming red across his form. He crumples, breath ceasing in a gurgle, the corridor slick, air metallic. The aftermath erupted, like Vesuvius unchained. Chaerea proclaimed Claudius, Tiberius's forgotten nephew, emperor from the castra, but chaos reigned. Caesonia, Caligula's consort, slain in her nursery, clutching their infant daughter crushed against a wall, the child too young for detail's cruelty. Her fate, a merciful blur in records, spared the blade's recital. Senators stormed the palace, overturning altars to the new god, while mobs looted the Esquiline's villas, flames licking skyward. Claudius, trembling in a curtained alcove, ascended amid Praetorian gold, executing Chaerea and Sabinus within hours. Irony's lash, the machine devouring its saboteurs. Vinicianus fled to Campania, caught and beheaded by month's end. Immediate anarchy, games cancelled, grain riots quelled by Claudius's doles, the Senate issuing damnatio memoriae, Caligula's name chisels, hammered from inscriptions, his statues toppled into the Tiber. This is what happens when the machine breaks. It devours everything, conspirators, innocents, even the infant's cry cut short. Yet the system survived. Claudius's reign, a refurbished engine, purges yielding to infrastructure's hum. Noblewomen exhaled, but scars lingered, Lollia's stele defaced, then restored under Nero. The empire endured, its fractures papered with arches and aqueducts, but the ghosts of unpunished knights whispered in the forum's winds. Caligula's fall was swift, but the blueprint fear as governance endured, a shadow play for Domitian's dread and Commodus's circuses. In that blood-slit corridor, Rome reclaimed a breath, but the machine's hum never truly stilled. In the quiet excavations of 1981, beneath the Palatines, Horti Lamiani, those pleasure gardens where Caligula once staged mock naval battles in artificial lakes, a team from the Soprintendenza Archaeologica uncovered a cache that rewrote the silences. Dr. Elena Ferroni, a young epigrapher from La Sapienza, knelt in the trench, her trowel scraping earth damp from Tiber mists, heart quickening as a marble slab emerged, incised with Latin cursive. Lollia Paulina, uxor memi, votum solvit libero patri, ne umquam obliviscatur. To Father Liber, she who was wife of Memmius, fulfills her vow, lest it ever be forgotten. Dated paleographically to 40 CE, carbon traces on adhering mortar confirmed the strata post-Caligulan fill, hidden perhaps by fleeing slaves. Ferroni's hands trembled, soil caking her nails. This wasn't mere graffito, but defiance etched in stone, invoking Bacchus, god of wine, and release as patron against erasure. Radiocarbon on organic inclusions dated it precisely, 39 to 41 CE, bridging the Rhine's nadir. What it proved was seismic. Lollia's voice, presumed lost to suicide's veil, persisted in subterranean prayer, a middle finger to the machine's grind. Dio's annals hinted at such vows, but this slab now in the Capitoline museums corroborated Suetonius's named victim, her words, a bulwark against propaganda's tide. Why it matters pierces deeper than marble. This find, amplified by Barrett's 2015 revision, underscores how trauma forges artifacts of resistance. Women like Lollia, not passive prey, but active archivists, their inscriptions outlasting emperors. Connect to today. In digital age, number Me Too tweets are modern stele, vows against forgetting Weinstein's or Epstein's webs. Psychologically, it illuminates PTSD's alchemy violation, birthing not just scars, but scripts of survival, as modern therapy echoes ancient catharsis. Parallels sting, autocrats from Putin to Kim, wielding women's bodies as geopolitical chess, unpunished until leaks become monuments. Remembering matters because erasure is the tyrant's first tool. Caligula's damnatio sought to bury his crimes, yet these women's nails metaphoric scratches on history's wall, refuse. It's not about divinity or dynasty. It's about power's predation when accountability atrophies and how refusal to vanish rekindles justice. The empire lasted 4 centuries more, but they couldn't efface 18 such women: Fausta, Ennia, Livia, Lollia, Emilia, and unnamed kin with chisels or forgetfulness. Think on that. Barrett tallies at least a dozen, attested, their collective weight tipping the scales toward Claudius's reforms. Redefined victory. They didn't witness vindication, their litters not cheered in triumph. But they left incisions in stone, in ledgers, in the Senate's hesitant resurgence. Lollia's slab, under museum lights, whispers. The machine rusts, but memory endures, a vow fulfilled across abyssal time. Lollia Paulina was meant to disappear. That was the plan, divorced by decree, exiled to oblivion's provinces. Her name, a smudge on imperial scrolls, her body a footnote in the annals of excess. Fausta, inspected like chattel at the banquet's edge. Ennia, bartered in her husband's ambition. Aemilia, claimed amid the circus's roar. Quintilia, tallied in the palace's ledgers. They were to dissolve into the machine's exhaust, their lineages co-opted, their spirits pulverized to dust finer than the Campus Martius sands. But they didn't disappear. They're still here. In Lollia's stele, unearthed from the Palatine's undercroft, its letters sharp as the day she carved them under Libyan moons. In Ennia's journal fragments, yellowed in Vatican vaults, her script defiant against the page's fray. In the koan silks of Fausta's donation to Vesta, threads woven with prayers that outlasted the temple's fire. In the archives that refused to burn Oxyrhynchus papyri, smuggling their echoes across deserts, senatorial codices copied by monastic hands in the 5th century. In the ground, archaeologists like Ferroni excavated, trowel by trowel, unearthing not just stone, but sovereignty reclaimed. And now they're here with you, because you chose to listen amid the banquet's smoke and the circus's din. Because you chose to remember the tremor in Livia's veil, the vacancy in Quintilia's gaze. Because you refused to let their silence be the final word, that hollow echo Caligula craved. Ne, umquam obliviscator, lest it ever be forgotten. Lollia's Latin, raw as a fresh incision, translated, a vow to Liber, god of liberation, that memory might free what chains could not. You're not just a reader, you're a witness. And witnesses are the past's lifeline, the chain unbroken from Palatine marble to your screen's glow. To witness is to metabolize atrocity into action. Not voyeurism, but vigilance, the quiet pact that says, I see you, and in seeing, I stand. These stories matter because they map power's pathologies, how a child's Caligula become an emperor's Caligula, how trauma transmutes to tyranny, how women's whispers can topple thrones. They connect to today in the headlines of silent survivors, in boardrooms where NDAs mimic imperial edicts, in movements that chisel Naumquam into viral stone. We owe the past not pity, but partnership, to amplify their vows in our verses, to dismantle machines in our midst, to ensure no Lollia waits in vain for history's trowel. Their resistance prayers in alcoves, stellae in soil, was the Republic's last Republican act, a refusal that ceded Claudius's constitutions, and, distantly, our own fragile forums. If this story moved you, if it reminded you why remembering matters the weight of a stolen night, the sting of unpunished gaze, leave a comment below. Tell me what struck you. Was it Ennia's journal, that intimate defiance? Share what you're thinking, the modern echo that haunts. Ask your questions about Barrett's revisions, Dio's silences. Because these conversations, these moments where we grapple with darkness in daylight's terms, that's how we forge safeguards, how we make sure the machine's hum fades to irrelevance. If you believe voices like theirs deserve to be heard, Lollia's vow, Fausta's gaze, subscribe. Not for spectacle, but for every silence, still needing shattering. For every story buried under 2 millennia of marble and myth. For every voice meant to vanish but refusing, stubbornly, to stay gone. Caligula ruled for 3 years and 10 months, built a system that showed every future tyrant how to commodify consent, how to auction dignity for denarii. And the blueprint never disappeared. But neither did their resistance, the stele that surfaced, the prayers that persisted.